Welcome, Robbie. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
Well, let's see. I have known you for way too long, entirely too long. Um, I am now a nurse down in South Carolina. I work in the ICU. I work in COVID units now. Not quite what I planned on. Um, I don't really know what else. What else is there about me? I grew up around the world.
And by around the world, you mean
Uh, Honduras, Mexico, India, China, and Louisiana, which is essentially a third world country. But
where in Louisiana is it a third world country?
I'm in Louisiana. It's like an hour and a half outside of New Orleans, and yeah,
Is it less civilized than Honduras?
I wouldn't say less than Honduras, but there were definitely some more civilized parts of China that I lived in.
Which of those places was your favorite, and which of those places was your least favorite?
Ah, that's a tough one. Probably India was definitely my favorite. I lived in the really, really pretty part up in the mountains of India. So once you get down to the cities, that's where it's like a lot dirtier, more polluted, dustier. But where I lived, it was like the Himalayas. It was just gorgeous.
Is it because a lot of the population is concentrated in those lower
Um,
cities?
Both concentration and also I think just the location of the cities. It was more of a dust bowl, mountains up on the sides instead of actually being up in the mountains away from everything. So part of that was just geography.
And which one was your least favorite?
Louisiana for sure.
I guess I should have guessed that. No, that's awesome. And now you live out right outside of Charleston.
Yep, yep.
And I've actually met a ton of people in New York who have never been to Charleston. And I always tell them, you got to go. The food is delicious. And it's just a nice vibe, like a chill, calm vibe. How would you tell someone that's never been there what it's like?
I mean, it's a weird dynamic because you've got this like old city, the old history, um, the old style homes downtown, but then in the food scene, they've tried really hard to compete and be contenders of like really top food in the country. And then you got the beaches. It's like this one little progressive bubble inside of South Carolina. So
Are you saying that South Carolina is very conservative?
you know, occasionally they give me hints that they might be. I don't know.
A hint here, a hint there.
A hint there every now and then. Yeah.
You mentioned the old school part of Charleston. That isn't there something in particular about the architecture about the buildings in Charleston?
They're yeah, a lot of the older ones are built in this narrow style, like they're tall and long. Which I've heard two different reasons for why they did it. Um, One reason was that it was just to help create a draft. The other reason was that people had to pay taxes based on how much their property like faced the street. So it was you were incentivized to build a narrow house, but it could go as deep as you wanted it to.
So basically, the front of the house facing the street where the front door is like 20 feet
Super tiny.
wide,
Yeah. Yeah,
but then 2 miles deep.
pretty much. Especially we down by the battery, the water area, there's mansions, but narrow street front.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't, if whoever's listening has never been to Charleston, you gotta go. I mean, just the architecture on its own is just so different. Like you were saying, the food has properly been developed to compete with top of the entire country, right?
Yeah.
Is there a location or two that you would recommend
I don't know. Like that's a tough one.
other than Pearls?
Yeah, other than Pearl's oyster shooters, which are amazing.
So good.
Yeah, I mean, like that's the thing is we have great seafood, but then you go to the wrong place, you'll just get fried seafood, which is good. They do it well, but like you're gonna get that everywhere else.
Right.
But I mean, honestly, all of King Street has like just new places that are almost all fantastic. East Bay has some of the old school stuff, the more established things that have been around a while. So you kind of got a mix of those two portions of downtown. You got old school style, and then new fusion type places on King.
What about I've heard good things about the corner of meeting and meeting. Is there anything good around there?
No, no, you're gonna get lost if you go to meeting and meeting.
Like you said, we have known each other for way too long, and just I'll tell the story really quickly here. I may have drank a little bit too much one night, and I was lost, and I was on the phone, and I literally thought that I was at the corner of meeting, and then when I turned around, I guess I did a 360 and said, "Hey, it's also meeting. I'm at the corner of meeting and meeting," which is, I guess, kind of impossible, right? Alcohol is one hell of a drug.
Good times.
So you're a nurse now.
Yeah, shockingly.
Do you like it?
Yeah, yeah, it's weird. I mean, yeah, I love it. It's stressful. It's crazy, but I mean, the hours are fantastic, and it's at the end of the day, I feel like I did something.
And how long have you been a nurse for?
Let's see, 8 years, 7 years, I think.
It's around 8 years.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've seen that maybe you weren't ready for or that surprised you, right? Because I assume you went to some sort of medical school where they prep you and all that good stuff. And then you get to the job and it's like, holy shit, what the fuck is this?
Um, let's see. I don't know. I feel like my training was overall decent. What has surprised me? I didn't realize how much shit I would be wiping. Am I allowed to swear?
No cursing.
No cursing whatsoever. This is a PG podcast.
Not one
Uh,
fucking time, okay?
no. Yeah, I mean, they don't tell you quite how much feces you'll be cleaning up, which when you're dealing with, 600, 700 pound patients gets really, really interesting.
I
Um,
don't even want to think about that.
I think growing up overseas in just all sorts of dirty environments and everything, smells don't bother me that much. But it's funny, every nurse seems to have like one thing that bothers them. Some people can't handle trachs, some people can't handle poop. Me, it's puke. It's the bile smell of puke. That makes me gag still to this day, 8 years in or 7 years
Hold
in.
on.
But
Where did you grow up where you're just like, oh, that's just the smell of shit. I'm okay with it?
I mean, I had outhouses. I lived in the jungle in a refugee camp in Honduras. So like, I mean, outhouses are pretty unsanitary, smelly places. They don't quite smell like lavender.
So living in Honduras prepped you for all the shit you would be wiping.
The smell, yes, yes.
Yeah, maybe not the act.
Not the act. I wasn't quite doing that.
So wait, so not to diverge from the being a nurse, but why were you at a refugee camp in Honduras?
My parents were missionaries, and so they ended up going and sort of running a Bible school. They started out they were running a Bible school in this refugee camp. They ended up running a clinic and a whole bunch of other stuff down there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. So it was during the Nicaraguan Civil War. Um, so it was mostly like refugees from Nicaragua that were living um, in Honduras until the war was over. And once it was over, like where I used to live is just it doesn't exist anymore. It's probably been eaten up by the jungle.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Was it all kind of makeshift housing then? Like just
Pretty much.
fake shelter?
I mean, I I mean, once I moved from there to other places, the shelter wasn't really high quality either. I mean, we're living in the jungle in just really, really rural areas, only dirt roads. One place you could only get to by boat, so it's kind of tough to criticize. Well, this is makeshift. This isn't. We didn't really have brick houses in any of those locations. So everything was a thatch roof.
That's wild.
One night that a jaguar was on top of our outhouse. We discovered that about like 30 minutes after a friend of ours had gone to use it, and then like the dogs came and like cornered the jaguar up on top of the outhouse. So,
So the dogs were critical to try and scare away all the
oh
animals
yeah,
of the jungle?
yeah, pretty much.
That is wild.
They didn't do a great job with the snakes and lizards, but I mean snakes and spiders, but the big animals they scared.
Did you ever get bit or attacked by anything?
No, no. Luckily enough, no. I did have a pet monkey that would bite me frequently, but no.
Maybe because it was a monkey, and I don't think they're meant to be pets.
It was his way of showing affection. Okay.
Yeah. Wait, what was? Do you remember the name of your pet monkey?
Oh, King Louis. We named him after Jungle Book because.
King Louis.
Yep.
I love it. I
That thing
love
was
it.
an asshole.
He was an asshole. You're the asshole for making him your pet.
That dog there, that monkey would get into our kitchen and just like tear it to shreds. He would like. There was one time we came home and this monkey had. We had a pitcher of Kool Aid. He tried to drink it and poured it all over himself, and then he'd gotten into the flour. So then he's in there with this like caked flour all over his body and hair.
Now, when you say when you say that he was your pet monkey, was it just the fact that he came around a lot, or did you actually keep him in the apartment at all times?
So we had like a big outdoor cage that we had him in the front yard. I mean, we bring him inside too. But like he had his cage the moment that we'd keep him in. Which
That is
continuing
fascinating.
continuing the story of him being an asshole. We had the first house we had him at. We had his cage up like right near the front of the house, and so our people would come to visit, and he would go and like shake their hands, but they didn't realize like before they got there, he would pee on his hands. Like he'd see people coming, he'd pee on his hands, and then he'd go try to shake their hands.
Wait,
It was a
wait.
it was a dominance thing.
You're telling me that when he saw different people come by, he would pee on his hands, shake them just to like fuck with them.
Yeah. Yes,
Is
absolutely. I'm
is
telling you.
that common in monkeys?
I don't know. I haven't done too much research on like monkey culture, but
This is insane. Why is this the first time I'm hearing of it?
I've probably told you this drunk, but just
Yeah, I don't remember. This is incredible. Was there anything else that the monkey would do other than mess with people?
um
Imagine if somebody came up to you today and they were like, "Hey, you're now my pet."
so this monkey like it absolutely loved me. Like to the extent that like when it would just hang on my back, especially when it was little, like I was his favorite. And so it was really difficult to get him off my back. Um the phrase "a monkey on your back" literally comes from like it's really tough to get a little monkey off your back, and when we try to take him off, he would like bite me to try to hang on with his teeth. So we would sometimes throw a towel around my neck and yank him, and he'd bite the towel instead. But like my house was right near the water, so every now and then I would just go jump in the water, and he would let go, swim to the dock, and yell at me from the dock because he didn't like getting wet. Um, but like one time, I jumped in, and I guess he was scared because other people were like laughing and yelling and making too much noise, so he didn't want to let go. Um, and so like I came back up for air and it went back down, but I guess his lungs weren't quite as big as mine. Almost drowned the monkey. My dad ended up doing like CPR on the little thing,
No way.
and he was fine. But I stopped doing the jump in the water thing after that.
I cannot imagine going up to someone and just saying, "Yeah, I've given CPR to a monkey."
To a monkey.
To a monkey. I mean, remember King's Cup? Never have I
Never have
ever.
I ever given
Well,
CPR to a monkey.
next time we play,
Really? I'm
Roger.
the only one? I'm the only
Yeah,
one?
yeah, really? Come on. Who hasn't given a monkey CPR in the middle of a jungle in Honduras? God damn it. This is wild. This is blowing my mind right now. Damn. So your dad saved a life.
Yeah, yeah. Saved my King Louis's life.
King Louis. That's incredible. And now today you're technically saving lives. Or have you ever, and I don't know how you measure this, but have you ever had a patient where they're dying, like literally dead, and then you bring them back?
I mean, like, yes and no. I mean, it's like it's a team effort. Uh, but I mean, like, there was one time that we had because I'm in the ICU. Whenever there's a code, when a patient just like crashes, their heart stops, they start breathing for whatever reason. Um, it goes out with a page, and I have to show up with the docs, and we will run the code. Um, and there was one where like it was bad. I honestly didn't think he was going to survive, but we got him back. He had to be intubated. He's sedated. He's out of it, and it's kind of wasn't really sure if he was going to pull through, but we had him stable enough that we had him back in the ICU. I left like came back 3 4 days later, and he's like walking out of there. I was like, "Hey, I shocked you. Like I pushed that button." But
Wait, so he went from almost dead to walking out 4 hours later?
no, 4 days later.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, damn, you guys just let him out like that? What kind of medical system you guys got down there in South
we're
Carolina?
that good. We're that good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that
Fix
makes
all
sense.
your problems in 4 hours.
If I ever get any serious ailment or whatever, however you say it, I'll fly down there and I expect to be cured within 2 hours. No, so I talk to me like I'm an idiot because I am. What are the different types of nurses that work at a hospital? Because you said ICU, that's intensive care unit, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, does that mean that you had special training to handle more extreme stuff, or can any nurse just kind of swap in, swap out?
So I mean, like I had extensive orientation once I came to the unit. Like we'll hire, you know, we prefer experience, but we'll hire a new grad, someone that's fresh out the gate. But then they have to have like 6 months of orientation, and then from there they have to be on like we limit how sick of patients they can get, so they can build that experience and that knowledge base. Because we have sicker patients, we deal with more risky drugs, more dangerous drugs that the wrong rate, the wrong dose, it's a lot more critical, and you can kill somebody in a minute or two if you screw up. So
Did you say 6 months of orientation?
yeah.
I don't think I've ever had orientation for more than like half a day.
Yeah, because I came in with experience, and even I think had 2 months of orientation. Yeah.
And what is orientation made up of?
I mean, basically, there is another nurse looking over your shoulder the whole time. Early on, they're going to be teaching you. They're going to be teaching you the thought process, things to double check, mistakes that people make, and you start to learn a little bit more about the medications, how to use them. The
So is it kind of like, hey, you're doing the job itself, but someone's watching you?
Yeah, I mean, the farther along you get in, at the very end, my last couple of days, I'm basically doing it all on my own. Or my last couple of weeks, I'm doing it wholly on my own. But there's someone there to be a resource to make sure I don't screw up.
Do you make it very obvious to the I hate to say customer, but to the
We call them
patient?
patients.
Well, I mean, it's a business, okay? They're customers.
Yes.
Um, so for the patients, do you try to hide the fact that they're new people and they're in orientation, or are they stuck to each other like glue and it's obvious that they're new?
So usually the way I do it, like if someone's orienting with me, I'll go in with them and I sort of make it like, hey, you get two for the price of one today. You got me and you got the orientee. That way they feel that there is always, there's an extra eye with it. I try not to, because I feel like, yeah, if you find out, oh, this is my first day off orientation, or like, hey, I'm still learning, and you never see the other nurse, then like probably would scare some people. So I feel like
Wait,
if
do they actually announce it that they're new?
probably not announce it, but I mean, people always ask me like, how long have you been a nurse? So
Hmm.
it's just a question of how honest you want to be.
When you were doing orientation, did you ever lie about stuff like that? Like, oh no, I've been doing it for years, and it's like month two.
Uh, I think I think for my first year, I would say about a year or a little under a year. I wouldn't be specific for my first year, and then after that, I was pretty honest.
So day one, you're like, oh, about a year,
Yeah, a little under a year.
a little under a year, about 364 days under a year.
I mean, I'd been in the. It was also one of those things of like I'd been in the medical field doing tech work and then nursing school that I felt like I'd been around medicine for years by that point. So it was. I didn't want to go into a long life story to my patients, but I felt like I could pretend at least that I was not brand new.
Have you ever been basically incredibly nervous where it could have probably hindered your performance in any situation?
How so? I mean, like, have I been nervous? Yes.
I don't know. Like, let's say that I had to give a presentation to my boss. Okay, yeah, that's fine, right? It's just me and my boss. Let me give him my little 2 cents of whatever I need to do. And then all of a sudden, an executive walks in and they're like, oh, show me. And it's like, oh shit, now there's an executive. This is like, and I might stutter or I might get nervous or I might go too fast and my performance goes weaker, right? Have you ever been in a situation where someone walks in and I don't know, they have like a knife sticking out of their head and you're like, oh my God. And you're like nervous to like touch it, right? But you have to remove it or whatever. I don't know. A crazy situation like that that would make you nervous and you're like, shit, don't fuck up.
I mean, the easy one is like it's a lot easier to start an IV when nobody's watching. When when I'm starting a patient on someone and they're like their children or their parents are like looking over your shoulder, like, oh, they're a really hard stick. Then it makes you like a little bit more nervous as you're starting the IV. Um, More so than I would be if like no one was in the room. I probably would just feel a lot more comfortable and do it a lot better. That was me early on. Now I feel a lot more comfortable starting IVs. But then
So
there's
is that
also
something that you would recommend to families in general? Like, hey, if a doctor or a nurse is in the room, do not look over their shoulder at all times.
yeah. I mean, if they're especially if you're doing something that like requires a certain level of skill, like on but is also not going to risk major harm. It might be nice to just either step out of the room or even just like don't sit over their shoulder with that pressure. But I mean, aside from that, like I still remember one of my first codes. It was the first time like I had a patient that like just 1 second I was talking to them, I left the room, came back like 2 3 minutes later to ask her something else, and she's blue. And there was like that first initial moment of like butthole clenching. You're scared shitless. It's
Like, oh my God, I just killed someone.
so then I turn around and I just yell down the hall to my friend and like call a code, but apparently I didn't yell it. It was like that initial panic of like, hey, we need to call a code, but like then the adrenaline or everything like started to kick in and I'm able to get in there and actually do the right things. But there's that initial fear and nervousness, especially for like your first one. Um, you see it a lot for people's first ones that they freeze up a little bit.
Yeah, I can only imagine the adrenaline that kicks in when you're like thrown into action like that, right?
Yeah, and I mean, some people really thrive in it. Some people really freeze up in it. And I think that's one thing that you see with like ICU nurses is like some people aren't really made out for it because they do like freeze up or they, you know, they leave the room or, because I mean, luckily there's other teams, there's other people that come in and help out. Um, but I think the best way for people to learn is like to be in it to,
Right.
and some people are like, they know how to handle it. Let me step out. And that ends up hindering their learning experiences.
Is is there any advice to anyone out there who is thinking about getting into that type of profession, whether it be ICU or another type of nurse, um, that you could like any advice that you could give to them, or anything like a warning, or I don't know, anything that you would talk to them about?
Ah, I don't know. I mean, nursing school sucks. They make you learn a whole bunch of things that you don't need to know. Um,
What's an example of that?
I like they teach you stuff that's incorrect for like practice. I remember having one teacher like I was giving medications to my patient who like my patient uh, couldn't swallow, so I'm giving them. I have to crush the medications, put them in water, like dissolve them, and give the medications through this tube. And the teacher was like, "Well, you can't mix these medications. You have to do them all individual, one by one by one." Um, which because they could potentially have a chemical reaction if you mix them, which logically makes sense, and that is what you're supposed to say for the tests. But realistically, if you didn't mix your medications, you would overload that patient's stomach with gallon of water if you're having to like flush these things. So like there's little things that they teach you that just aren't really true in practice. Um, as well as like a bunch of reports and things, analysis that you don't really need to know, you don't really need to do, or it's just like you have to write basically a 3-page paper on something that you should be able to figure out instinctually.
Gotcha. So besides medical or nursing school sucking, what else would you tell them?
the It's awesome. Like it's a really great job, and uh, I came in not really realizing how much of it was a service industry too, though, because I mean you're dealing with families, you're dealing with patients, there is that like waiter thing of like you got to be a nice person and like put on a face. You
You
can't
got to
just
be
be that.
nice to the customer. The customer's always
Yeah, the
right.
customer is right. Um, to you, it is just your job. To your patients, it isn't. Like it's people are really really scared when they're in the hospital, and that's something I guess you have to be kind of forgiving. People are assholes sometimes, but it's really because they're scared about their mom. They're scared about their parent or their sibling, and they will take it out on you. But like you have to be prepared for that because it isn't just your everyday job to them. It's the worst day of their life.
Nurses in particular, but everybody in the medical world that is out there doing good, saving lives, all that good stuff. I mean, obviously, especially during a pandemic, you guys are all heroes. Um, and, not just to you, but everybody that you work with and everybody that's listening that's in the medical field. I mean, thank you, because without you guys, I mean, where the hell would we be, right? And it's crazy to think that we used to have a president that would literally say, well, maybe it's a Chinese hoax, right? Um, it's not really that bad. Um, Coronavirus is what I'm saying. You said earlier in the podcast that you didn't necessarily want to be in the COVID unit, but you ended up in the COVID unit. Why did that happen? What did South Carolina go through? How did it all play out? And what do you want people to know from a medical perspective of, some people wear masks, some people don't wear masks, some people take it serious, some people don't. And then some people think, hey, even if I get it, it's okay, right? Most people just stay at home. 2 weeks later, they feel fine. I mean, there's just so much to unpack here. Why did you end up being in the COVID unit? What was it like? And what is your recommendation or advice to people listening?
All right. Well, that's going to be a long story, so I'm going to crack open another drink.
Hell, buddy, give me a second. I'm going to go get another beer too. Okay, I'm back. Listeners know we are not recording in the morning. It's around 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, so don't judge us.
I mean, it is middle of the night where in China, so it's always.
Right. If they can drink, we can drink. This is America, god damn it.
um. So let's see. The ICU that I work in, there's several ICUs that sort of specialize. We have a cardiac ICU for the heart. We have a neuro ICU. We have like a trauma ICU, which is like gunshots and car crashes. And my ICU is sort of mostly specializes in lung disorders, but it also does a lot of like multi-organ, um, like kidneys. We deal a lot with the kidneys. It's specialized in lungs, but also deals with a lot of the overflow. Um, so my ICU is basically deals with flu-like diseases. So we're already starting to get,
So just by luck.
just by luck, yeah. On top of that, after Ebola, the hospital had created a specialized team um, that went through additional. It's like the 2 days of training and then quarterly training on dealing with like the hazmat gear. Um, and so it was for like they ended up making this unit or this team of people that are supposed to deal with like the really specialized diseases, the highly infectious diseases. So when COVID was really first starting, no one really knew how. We were still figuring out how it was transmitted, and so they basically activated that team to start dealing with the testing early on, and also to start training people in how to do that thought process of dealing with the most infectious diseases. So right out the gate, I was thrown into the just testing and training people on how to do the testing, um, which I think I've sent you pictures of that crazy outfits that we had where we don't have to anymore because I think we've learned enough that we don't have to go with. I mean, I was being hosed down with bleach in the early days.
Just because there was no information of what this really was, how it gets transmitted, or not enough information for people to feel confident, right?
Yeah, and I think also because we have been trained in the for the extreme situation, the general attitude was it was better to be safe and use that training. And then as we learn more, we're able to back off. But early on, it was safer, better safe than sorry, I guess.
Yeah.
So so started doing the testing, and again, because people didn't know, there weren't many people volunteering or too eager to be in that field. Um, and so as we started we had to create a COVID unit. Um, I just kind of got flexed into that. Um,
Were you ever running out of, what is it, personal protective equipment, PPE?
um, yeah, not never to the degree that I think people in New York were.
Oh no, New York never got hit. We haven't seen any protests.
Well, it's an anarchist jurisdiction. They made it all up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We just kicked all of the Chinese people out, and we're just fine. Thanks, Donald Trump.
Um, I never had the extreme restrictions on PPE that they did. We were recycling PPE, which it's not supposed to be. I was There were multiple times that I did get masks that had been dry rotted. Uh, I had them like burst apart, like basically the mask would just tear in half in the middle of my ship. So that wasn't fun.
So, is the reason that you guys never quite ran out of stuff because you were literally recycling and reusing?
That is up for debate. Um, I was told that our masks were not, they hadn't reached the point that they were reusing. They said they're like, we're collecting them, we're not going to reuse them. Uh, I don't wholly believe that because I definitely put on some masks that smelled. I mean, I put on a mask and it smelled like cigarettes. Like the person who'd used it before was a hard smoker. I put on other ones and it smelled like essential oils, like maybe the previous nurse had maybe put some dabs of lavender oil or peppermint oil so that it didn't smell so bad. So I don't wholly believe that my masks were all brand new. Um, they claimed that they weren't recycled, but we also had some old ones that had been in storage for way too long, and the straps had just completely rotted off. So we were dealing with masks that were like the straps were stapled on um, to with replacement straps. Those things smelled absolutely rancid, but
And you had to use that?
yeah.
Isn't it sad to think that the country that the world looks to as the example, the shining star, the, I don't know, best of the best, and there we are just making people like you who save lives use rotting masks and reusing PPE. And did you guys ever get to the point where you had to use like bandanas and stuff like that?
Thankfully not. Um, Thankfully, I never reached that point. I just had rotting masks instead, which hopefully won't give me lung disease. Um,
That is insane. That blows my mind.
I don't know. I think as you study medicine and you learn, you look at other countries, and so wasn't. It honestly wasn't surprising that we were so bad at it. It wasn't really surprising that we weren't prepared or that we were underfunded, because like even though we are the most expensive, I think we are the number one most expensive healthcare system in the world. We're not really the best at handling the masses.
The return on investment is piss poor.
Yeah, I think there are some things that we can do that there's extreme situations that things that we're really good at that other parts of the world may not be as good at. But in terms of dealing with the masses, like overall healthcare, we're not that great, especially for return on investment.
Well, it's still blowing my mind that we had to go through that, especially New York. And it's sad that, initially, I mean, the streets were empty here, man. And a lot of people were literally attacking Asian Americans, Asian immigrants, and come to find out, oh yeah, we got it from Italy. So the strain in New York was a little bit different, and it was attacking slightly different. And I don't know, it was a crazy time, and I can only imagine what medical workers were going through. And just hearing you say, I could smell cigarettes in my mask. I mean, uh, uh, that makes me sick.
That's so one thing. Like for you in New York, coronavirus was incredibly real
Right.
because of like the absolute shutdown plus I mean really the amount of death that was going on there. It was a very very real thing for you. I was talking to a friend about this, about how it isn't real for a lot of the country for like, and part of that is not the medical field's fault, but because it is such a, you know, contagious disease, um, we don't allow visitors. We don't allow people to come in and see their family. Um, and it's something that like I totally understand, um, for safety, for especially when you're running low on PPE. You know, you're going to use that PPE to try to save somebody's life. You're not going to give the PPE to their cousin, or even their sibling or parent. Um, Especially since you don't even know if they're going to use the PPE properly or whatever. But that being said, there isn't a face to this disease in the same way that there is for other diseases. Like you think of like cancer, and you have that bald head, you have pictures of the patients that are dealing with it and going through it,
Mm,
and that disease has a face. You
mm.
know,
That's a good point.
AIDS. Yeah, coronavirus doesn't have a face. The face is like nurses in their gear. That's the face of the disease. There isn't. You don't actually see the patients, and for a lot of the country, I understand why people don't believe it or question it, um,
Right.
because there isn't that face that we have in for other diseases.
So you literally have worked in the COVID units. You've been in the middle of the COVID battle, fight, war. Like you just said, COVID doesn't have a face. So, what do you think about the people who consistently point to the mortality rate of this disease to justify not wearing a mask, not taking it serious, and say, well, the flu kills just as many, or whatever they can come up with, whatever statistic they can come up with? What would you tell them that they're missing? Like, what are they not
Uh,
comprehending?
well, two things. I'll start with the flu argument because that one makes me really really mad. Right now, I haven't seen the most recent numbers, but how many deaths are we at? We're at like,
250, 260, somewhere around
yeah,
there,
quarter of a million.
sadly.
Um, the year is not over, and this is deaths with quarantine, with masks, with hand sanitizer, with all these restrictions that we put on ourselves. We're still at around a quarter of a million. If you combine the last 3 years of the flu, it's not that.
The last 3 years?
Yeah, so I think I don't know if the numbers have completely come out for the 2019-2020 flu season, but prior to that, it was 60,000. The year before that, it was 30,000, and the year before that, it was 60,000.
Christ.
It's really nowhere close. But on top of that, these are the numbers of deaths. Um, but I had so many patients that would come in that, like, I had this one guy. He was awesome. Like, I love this guy. Um, he ended up coming in, and he was in the hospital for about a month. Like, super sweet guy. You thought he was gonna make it. He seemed like one of those that was just gonna pull through, not even really need to be intubated. And then all of a sudden, he just tanked quick, which was the thing with a lot of our COVID patients. They would, and they do, they'll look good, and all of a sudden, like, you, within 12 hours, you go from barely any oxygen to they need to be intubated. And so, I mean, this guy, we ended up having to intubate him. We ended up having to lay him face down. We'll call it proning, which we only do for the sickest of patients, because when you prone people, you're at risk for pressure ulcers because your front side is your bonier side.
You're at risk for what?
Pressure ulcers, like, say if you just sat for like without moving, without shifting, without doing anything. Eventually, the bone in your skin, like your tailbone, would just start to dig in. You know, the pressure builds up, and if
Mm.
you're not shifting, moving, eventually you're going to develop a wound, and that's just on your backside. If you're laying face down, you know, your nose, your shoulders, your knees, and you're not moving, you're not shifting around, you know, we'll come in and we'll turn you every few hours, but like that's your risk increases. So we really try not to do that. But this guy was really really sick. We flipped him several times. He ended up getting over it, but the man has had like lifelong issues that will stick with him, from just the organ damage that he developed from the shedding of clots. Because coronavirus, people think of it as just a respiratory disease, but it really isn't. It isn't just your lungs. You start to you there's increased clotting, um, so you end up developing blood clots that will shower your system. And they may be microclots, but they end up getting stuck in your kidneys, and then you have kidney failure, which the longer that goes on, it can be a temporary thing or it can be a lifelong thing. You can end up on dialysis, or in this guy's case, he ended up with like pretty severe heart damage because of the clots that he developed in his heart.
And this is not some, and I'm adding into the argument of, oh, it's worse than the flu or whatever, but a lot of people I hear say, well, the reason they got sick is because they had a pre-existing condition. But it sounds like it's the coronavirus and the fact that it's not just a lung respiratory issue, but it's a blood type of disease that can trigger a shit ton of damage, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think the so if you do already have a pre-existing condition, which I mean, this is the United States. Most of the country has at least obesity as a pre-existing condition. Like,
Are you calling me fat, sir? Are you calling me a fat ass?
are you American?
God damn right I'm an American.
Odds are you might be.
No, yeah, I mean, we have a weight problem clearly.
We have a weight problem. We have cholesterol problems. We have
The
diabetes. Like
diabetes,
diabetes.
diabetes.
Like just as a nation, we're not a healthy country. Um,
So clearly, coronavirus is real. It is not. It is not a disease that chooses poor people or rich people, um, black or white, any sort of nationality. It just affects you if you catch it. Um, Obviously, the healthier you are, the better off you are. Is that correct?
I would say yes. I mean,
Overall, I mean, you're not guaranteed,
overall,
right?
no, no. I mean, you always hear stories about people that are perfectly healthy, but I don't know. I'm a skeptic. Whenever I hear somebody was perfectly healthy, I do wonder if that just meant they hadn't seen a doctor in a while, and they didn't
Right.
know.
Yeah, and I'm guilty of that. I go to a doctor once every couple, decades. And so, I mean, who knows? Maybe I have something, right? But I just don't know.
Exactly.
And if I went to the doctor right now and I said, "Hey, I have coronavirus," I think that overall people would be like, "No, yeah, he was perfectly healthy. He went running. He wasn't overweight, X, Y, and Z." But maybe I had shit ton of cholesterol and a shit ton of other issues, right? But I just didn't know.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, that's the thing. Even with the flu, like I'll see people come in 18, 20, and they die from the flu, which normally doesn't kill someone that age, but they didn't know they had this heart issue.
right. Like my old roommate, our good friend, Minnesota Dave, he looked extremely healthy, but the man was on pills every day because he had certain conditions, right?
Yeah.
But if you didn't know any better, you would say, "Hey, that's a perfectly healthy human being." Um, what I'm getting at is What would you want to tell the average American who isn't really quite sold on the coronavirus? You know, he's heard the president say stupid things, he's heard the media say stupid things and stupid statistics like the flu, it's worse, but clearly you've debunked that. Health condition debunked. Overall, what would you tell them uh, as a message, as a nurse, communicate to for all medical people out there who are actually working their asses off and risking their lives to help them?
Um, I mean, it's real. It it really makes me mad when people just, like, it's a risk I'm willing to take. It's I don't care if I get it, I'll deserve it. Like that really doesn't matter in this situation when it's a highly contagious disease. First of all, you may be fine. You potentially, if you think you will be, maybe you will be, but there's so many other people that you will affect, and are the people that you care about, um, are they going to be okay? Like I think if I got it, I would hopefully, um, be okay. I think I could handle it pretty well. But I also know that the people in my life, my dad, my friends, they may not be able to. So it ends up being really selfish, even if I was 100% confident that I'd be fine with it. Uh, it's really, really selfish to put the people I care about at risk.
So basically, don't be a selfish asshole
Don't be a selfish asshole.
because it's not just you.
Yeah, I would say two other things. The idea that it's a conspiracy is, it's really, really narrow-minded to think that a global pandemic that is shutting down,
Virtually every country.
yeah, countries that disagree with each other, countries that can't agree on any major issue, have somehow like conspired to create like what, a fake disease just to make Donald Trump lose. I don't understand, the idea that people like are that coordinated. They can't coordinate on anything. I like to say, what's the phrase? Incompetence is, it's like easier to believe than malice,
Mm,
where people are more likely to just be bad at handling diseases, um, than they are to have some massive conspiracy.
right.
But also, in the end, like it's a really crappy way to die. Like if you are in the, whatever small percent, um, that ends up in the ICU, it's a really, you are alone. Your family's not allowed to come see you. They might get to FaceTime with you. And at best, they might be able to look in the window. But usually, you're too far gone. Actually, I'd say 99% of the time that the family's getting to see them, that patient is pretty much already gone. It is a really lonely, somewhat scary way to die. Um, I, like, I've seen so many people die from other diseases, and I mean, I just had somebody just like 2 weeks ago, and it was a sort of a beautiful moment. Her family was there; they were able to hold her hand, say goodbye. She was with it enough that she could nod to them and, respond to them, and it was, a sad moment, but it was, they had that together, and I think the family will always remember that. I don't have that for my COVID patients. I have them just dying on the ventilator, and usually a nurse will try to go and hold their hand, but if we're short staffed and we're slammed, sometimes you don't even get that. Um, if you're prone, you are face down, ass up, just dying. It's a it's a really shitty way to die. Um,
Sounds like the flu to me.
yeah, yeah, sounds like just like the flu. No, I got in trouble one time because I had a patient. It was a family, like the whole family had COVID, and the son and the dad were both in the ICU. Um, the son got better, and we were able to send him out of the ICU. The dad didn't. He just got worse and worse and worse, and eventually there was nothing more that we could do. And so the son asked if he could come and sit with his dad while his dad died, which I cleared with the my doc in the upper level, and I mean the son was sick himself, so I basically told the nurse that had his son, I was like, I'll take responsibility of him while he's in the ICU, and I'll watch him while he comes and sits with his dad. Uh, and so I did. He sat with his dad for like 2 3 hours, and in the end, his dad passed, and it was a rare human moment in COVID. It was the only time I've ever had anyone with their family when their family died during COVID. Um, but I sent the son back to his unit. He was fine. The nurse that had him tried to write like a commendation for me. Like I don't know what the right phrasing is, but he tried to write like a praise or a thank you for me being able to watch his patient, just so that his patient could be with his dad. Uh, but in the end, it got like written up by management because like we're not supposed to let anyone come in. No one's supposed to come in and sit there because of the risk or the waste of PPE. We're short on PPE. You shouldn't be risking people or other people in the hospital by needlessly moving patients through the hospital, um, which sucked. I told my manager I'm pretty sure I made the right decision, and I've been told that my manager has told other people I made the right decision. She just hasn't told me that. I don't know.
I think
It's
I think you made the right human decision.
yeah, and in most times we don't have that chance. Like it was the one chance, and that's what I told my supervisor was it was we never ever have this opportunity. And any other situation, family can't come in, but this situation, he had it. He was already in the hospital. He had literally been sitting across the hall from his dad 2 days earlier. And the only reason he wasn't still there was because he'd gotten better, but he was still in the hospital. So it was worth the small risks of moving him down there for a few hours.
I mean that's powerful stuff, man. That is human at its core. We don't want to die alone or have the thought of just going, right? I mean, look at the pyramids. They literally got built so people could be remembered, so people could find their way to heaven, so people can just have that human connection and say, hey, this person was here. And maybe that needs to be the face of COVID, right? Like, do you really want to go and die by yourself, possibly face down, ass up? Like, that's not the way to go. And that's not the flu. That's not some fake Chinese virus. That's not whatever the media has spewed out there. It's just reality. And so people should wear a mask. People should be careful. They shouldn't be selfish assholes and take care of each other, right? Take it serious. Pfizer came out with a prototype to a vaccine. Looks promising. Who knows if that will be the answer or not? But no, Robbie, thank you so much for sharing all of this. I
So
think
I,
what
I
you're
got a question for
doing.
you,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
before you wrap up. Are you getting a vaccine?
Am I gonna get a vaccine?
Yeah.
Hell no.
I mean that's I'm optimistic about there being a vaccine, but it's like who's getting it? I'm getting it because it's my job. You know, my dad's getting it because he understands he's at high risk. Um,
Yeah. So from my understanding is the government has been mass producing um, multiple versions of the vaccine, including the one that looks promising.
I'm not sure about that part.
No, yeah. I heard an NPR article where they were talking about the Pfizer vaccine that quote unquote had 90% um, success rate. It's been in mass production already. However, by mass production, that means that maybe 4 or 5% of the population will be able to get it in the next couple months. Um, Meaning, you know, frontline workers like you will probably get it, and extremely high risk population people will get it. And how the government will decide which old homes to go to first, I don't know. But again, they're quote unquote mass producing a handful of vaccines. And I think one of the challenges with the Pfizer one is that it has to be kept at like negative 80 degrees Celsius, which is just beyond any regular freezer's capabilities. So, one of the challenges with that, obviously, is how do you keep it that cold and move it around the country?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, again, I'm in that boat of I'm gonna play it safe as much as I can in general, um, but because I don't want to get it. Even though in New York they've opened up restaurants and all these other things, I rarely go out. I just don't. I'll go for a run. I'll walk around the park. I'll do whatever, but I don't tend to go anywhere near where there are large sums of people because I don't want to get it. I don't want to be that guy in a hospital forcing a nurse to use used PPE, right? I don't want to be that asshole. That being said, you every now and then you kind of have to enjoy yourself, right? So if someone that I love here wants to go out and grab a beer, you know what? Let's go grab a beer, put your mask on, let's be safe, right? Um, but yeah, I don't imagine that the vaccine will ever reach to my level. I think by the time that the vaccine comes out and it takes care of healthcare workers and those at the highest risk, by the time that that's all over in 2022 is my prediction. Um, the rest of the population that just doesn't, I don't want to say we don't need it, but the coronavirus will become so low widespread that not everybody has to get it, right? It'll be virtually wiped out. Am I wrong in thinking that?
Um, a little bit. Like I'm in the way it's going to be rolled out. I think you're spot on. It's going to be to the healthcare workers and the most at risk, um, which will in itself be its own weird ethical debate.
Dilemma.
Which
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that itself could be a whole podcast. Like I really want to be a fly on the wall for that conversation of you know who is more at risk. Do we give it to who do we give it to first? Um, that would be really interesting. And then it's also, are those people also going to trust you, um, or are they going to feel like guinea pigs? Um,
Right.
so,
Right.
because like one could say, okay, well, minorities are at more risk for. Are you really going to roll this out just for minorities, and are they going to trust? Like, hey, let's just give this to the non-white people. Like that in itself would be such a weird ethical. situation of trust. Like I really, really want to know how they roll that out. That's gonna be super interesting. But in the end, I think in the end it needs to be kind of like the flu vaccine, which I'm sure you probably don't get either. Um, but it still will keep spreading. You know, just because you're not at risk of complications, you're not at risk of getting it and giving
And
it.
spreading it to those that are at risk.
So I don't see it going away. And then at the same time, as people that didn't get the vaccine continue to grow older or develop new issues, um, like alcoholism from staying in quarantine the whole time,
Right.
you're going to develop new comorbidities, new risk factors.
Oh, without a doubt. I've met so many people that have gained a hefty pound or two during quarantine, or who have demolished their healthy habits and replaced them with unhealthy habits, including
Yeah,
alcohol.
you can't go to the gym.
Right. Oh, I used to go to the gym, I used to do this, and I used to do that. It all shut
Now I watch
down.
Netflix and
Yeah, now I watch Netflix, so Netflix stock is up, but my belly is also up. And, you know, I've just snacked throughout the pandemic. I wash it down with a good beer or two, and there you go. There's a recipe for an unhealthy life, right?
yeah, yeah. I think by the time that the vaccine is available for you, I mean, I would hope, I would assume that it will be treated essentially like the flu vaccine, where it's free if you have health insurance. Um,
Yeah, I mean that's the one thing that this government that is incapable of doing anything um keeps promising, right? When the cure comes out, when the vaccine comes out, for the testing, all of this stuff, we'll give it to you for free. Is it really free? No, because and we'll end up having to pay up for it, one way or another. But still, I do think it's good. And like you said, by the time it comes out, for me,
you should have a pretty good idea of if it, how effective it is, side
right,
effects.
right. So,
I
you
will
know,
be the guinea pig for you.
you will be the guinea pig for me, and RIP to all the guinea pigs out there. Love you, and I hope you survive. But let's face it, um, it's not going to be all pretty. 90% is not 100% success rate, right?
Yeah,
No, but no, like I said, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you for the knowledge and the statistics and the experience. And god damn it, you had a pet monkey that just threw Kool-Aid and flour everywhere.
and then pissed on his hands.
Pissed on its hands to shake. I mean, I might try that one day actually. Like next time I have to like meet people that I don't like, I'm like, oh, here they come. Piss all over my hands, shake their hand, and then I don't
And then they'll
know,
be like, "Wow, he's the dominant one. He's a very dominant person."
either that or if they try to fight me, I'll have to jump on their back and not let go. Um, no, but seriously, thank you for coming on. And again, thank you to all the frontline workers that have gone through this. And it's not just medical people, right? It's the people at the grocery stores and gas stations and uh, delivery service. I mean, people were just ordering out the ass during the pandemic, right?
And I feel, yeah, people in grocery stores don't get enough credit.
No, I mean, my very first guest, you know him, Zach
Yep.
Large. I told
Yeah.
him, thank you for your service. And because he put himself out there and he literally did what needed to be done. And so, um, with that being said, I love you, sir. You know I love you. And I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
See you, man.